Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Script Apart. My name's Al Horner, and this is a podcast about the first draft secrets of great movies and TV shows. Each episode, a brilliant screenwriter breaks down their first draft for what became a beloved movie or series. On today's show, don't go down to the basement, right guys? Rule number 1 of surviving a horror movie. One of the many miracles of Barbarian, the astonishing feature debut from my guest today, Zach Cregger, was how it took that tried and tested trope of the horror genre and managed to mutate it into something so surprising, so unpredictable. Kind of like the basement-dwelling creature at the heart of the movie, Barbarian roared out of the shadows seemingly from nowhere to become one of the biggest smashes of 2022, a box office topping behemoth admired by everyone from Stephen King to Jordan Peele. If you've seen the film, it will not surprise you at all to learn that such an unusually structured story kind of came about in an unusual way. In the conversation you're about to hear, Zach tells me how the movie actually began as just one scene. A woman called Tess checks into an Airbnb, only to discover that there's someone else already inside. There, she must decode a situation fraught with potential danger. Is the man that she's marooned in this apartment with a friend, or is he a threat? Zach wrote the scene unsure where it was leading, until eventually his subconscious took over. The rest of the film, as you'll hear, kind of spilled out of him intuitively from that moment on, resulting in a deliciously twisty maze of a movie, full of humour as well as horror. This is a spoiler-filled conversation, so if you're yet to see Barbarian, you may want to pause now, then come back when you've seen the film. If you are up to speed, however, listen on for fascinating revelations about how Zach's own experience of an alcoholic father quietly informed his script. We talk about why it was important to leave absolutely no ambiguity whatsoever around the true nature of AJ, Justin Long's character, and what the film expresses about toxic masculinity. We also get into Zach's original ending for the movie, as well as some other interesting changes from script to screen. I had as much fun talking about this movie with Zach as I did watching Barbarian, which, if you've seen the film, you'll know is high praise indeed. This is one of the funnest, most unique experiences you'll have in a cinema all year. A quick shout out before we dive in to our Patreon community. If you like what we do and want to help the show continue to grow, you can join us on Patreon by visiting patreon.com/scriptapart. We really do appreciate your support. Okay, with that out of the way, let's get into it, shall we? This is the amazing Zach Cregger talking about the first draft secrets of Barbarian, one of my favourite movies of 2022. Thank you guys for tuning in. You're listening to Script Apart, hosted by me, Al Horner, produced by Camille Demecq. Hey Zach, welcome to Script Apart. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to dive straight into the big talking point of this movie, or at least the talking point that I think deserves to be the main kind of point of discussion. I've seen a lot of great movies this year, man. Barbarian, however, is the only one that has revolutionized my duvet game. Keith really came through for me on that front. I'm now changing my duvets quicker and easier than ever before. So shout out to Keith.
Good job, Keith. You don't have to go all the way in. You know, you can just like put your hands in it. Like I did it last night, and it's like you turn it inside. I put my hands in, find the corners, and it's kind of up around my neck. I don't go all the way in it like he does, but it does work.
It does, yeah. It's also raised the bar for me now. You know, when I go see Wakanda Forever this weekend, there better be some handy tip on how to peel carrots or organize my recycling. I demand
you're not learning
life hacks.
Practical skills from a movie, then what are you doing?
Exactly.
What are we doing?
Right. Yeah. In all seriousness though, man, like huge congratulations on this film.
Thank you.
I can imagine it's been and probably continues to be quite the adjustment, wrapping your head around the reaction to Barbarian. Has there been one particular moment, however big or small, that stands out as particularly surreal in the journey to this film becoming the phenomenon that it's become?
Yeah, there was one moment. It was I was in Toronto and we had screened. This movie was not part of the official TIFF lineup, but we screened at like a Midnight Madness kind of a thing before TIFF. So it's like the night before TIFF starts, they do this like at midnight. They do kind of like a genre, kind of a cheap grindhouse sort of a vibe usually. And this year it was Barbarian. And it was a really great screening. But I knew that the next morning I would wake up and the press embargo would be lifted. And I was nervous about it. I was expecting to get mixed at best, you know.
Why was that?
Why was I expecting that?
Yeah. Is it just because it takes so many kind of tonal risks?
Because it's a horror movie where people get their arms ripped off and beat to death with them. And, you know, and I thought people would think, you know what I was expecting is I was expecting to be like, Barbarian thinks it's smarter than it is. Some horror people will find joys in its, you know, camp, but it's a movie that takes big swings and misses more than it connects. That's kind of what I had prepped myself for. Anyway, but you know what? It was. I feel gross talking about this because it's gross, but it's the true answer to your question is, you know, I looked at Rotten Tomatoes and at that time it had a 96. It's gone down now to a 92, but it had a 96. And I just was like scrolling through and seeing like the reviews from like the New York Times and the Washington Post and Variety and Seattle Times and all these places that, you know, really were the heavy hitter tastemaker places were all like, they not only did they get it, but they seemed to really, really enjoy it. And I'm certainly one of those people who's like thinks very mixed feelings about Rotten Tomatoes. I think oftentimes Rotten Tomatoes is kind of like the enemy of where we should be as a film culture or whatever. But when it goes your way, it's fun to revel in it. And that morning I reveled. And yeah, especially for horror, it's like I don't trust Rotten Tomatoes scores because I think there's a lot of brilliant horror movies that get panned by Rotten Tomatoes, and I think there's some terrible ones that get like, you know, 100%. And it's just like, come on, like that can't be the barometer of quality. But I will totally, you know, admit that in that morning I shed a tear, and I was just like so gratified to see that like I wasn't totally wrong in taking these big swings. You know, it took me years to get this movie made. It took me years to get anybody to say yes to producing this thing because it's a weird movie and it resets itself on page 45 and we follow a rapist for 30 pages and it doesn't fit the standard model. It's not a 3-act structure. It's a weird one. And I had many, many times where, you know, I was rejected so much by truly everyone I could get it to said no. And then there were moments where people were like, we'll do it, but you can't direct it and we're going to shave all the cool shit out of it. And I said no. And it was just very gratifying to be like, wow, I feel so gross saying this, but whatever. But it was a very gratifying day where I was like, I stuck to my guns and it feels like it was the right move. And that morning, it just kind of felt like it was the first time I was able to like, kind of let my guard down a little bit. You know, I was very proud of the movie before I saw any Rotten Tomatoes score. I was like, I made the movie I wanted, and that's a victory. And you know, I can sleep soundly knowing that like I did the thing. But to have it be like, oh, I did the thing, and people agree that it was worth it. That felt really good.
What were some of the cool things then that studios were trying to kind of encourage you to take out?
I think I think that the AJ character would not have been a rapist. I don't know what the movie would have looked like if that had been changed. I think they wouldn't have wanted to introduce him on page 45. I think they would have wanted to like weave his narrative in. So maybe we would have been jumping back and forth, which I think would have been not the right move. I think that, we would have to really defang the backstory of like, you know, incest, rape, you know, cycles. And that probably would have been like muted, if not totally altered. And I don't think I would have been able to cast who I cast. You know, I think there's just a lot of things that would have changed. But luckily, you know, this was an independent movie that was, you know, I scraped together $3.5 million through overseas funds. And so we got everything ready to go. And then the way it became a studio movie is like truly on the day of my going away party to go to Bulgaria to start shooting, my financier died. And the movie was basically canceled. And then at the 11th hour, we got Roy Lee, my producer, got New Regency to read the script. And he was like, you have 24 hours to like read the script and give me an answer. And they read it and they upped the budget to $4.5 million. And they were like, you seem to already be about to shoot the movie, so there's no point of giving you any notes. So I guess, go shoot the movie and we'll see what happens. Like, I think they were just doing Roy a favor. So I got to go make this movie with no studio notes, like really none. So I got to shoot the movie I wrote, and thank God I did. And then I came back and they liked it, and here we are. So it was a real kind of a backdoor into making a studio movie. It never happens this way. This is not a model for aspiring filmmakers. You know what I mean?
As you say, it resonated with critics. It's also resonated with audiences in a huge way. Is there anything you think we can read into the film's success in terms of what audiences have perhaps been hungry for in our current movie landscape? Like, beyond just how well told this story is, and I guess the power of its many surprises, what do you see as being key to why Barbarian has connected so emphatically?
I think it's fun. I don't know. I don't know if I can surmise as to why it seems to have resonated with people. I think at the end of the day, I hate that phrase that I just used, but I think I just think it's because it's just a fun movie. It's scary. It's funny. It's a ride. It's if I may be so bold, it's not really dull. I think the scenes in the movie that are not like adrenaline rush are scenes where your brain is still so actively engaged because you're trying to figure out what this movie is. And I think when watching a guy have a meeting with his business manager to talk about finances is not the kind of scene you normally would expect from a horror movie. But that scene works because people are leaning forward to be like, why are we watching this? Yeah. What is this for? And I think it's the context that makes it work. So I don't know. I just think that it's, I've never seen a movie like it before. And I think other people would say the same.
The unpredictability that you mentioned there as being one of the kind of main calling cards of this film, one of the main reasons for its success. From what I understand, that's kind of reflective of the flow and the freedom with which you wrote this movie. Can you give our listeners an overview of what the actual writing process was like? Because it sounds like it was a little bit unorthodox and really interesting.
I mean, so Barbarian I did not write it the way I've written other scripts, I didn't write it. I didn't sit down to write it to be a movie, really. I was in this chair right here late at night. And the way I wrote this one is like, I wrote it all at night. I have these like colored light bulbs. So like I turn this room like green or red, like really dark, weird, creepy colors. I put on this pulsing, horrible, evil ambient music. So it's just like, it feels like a layer in here, and it just kind of gets me in the creepy zone. And then I just honestly, like, I thought of a double booked Airbnb, and I thought of how scary that would be for a woman. And I was just like, I'm just going to just start writing what happens. I don't know what's going to happen. And I'm just going to follow my fingers. Like Stephen King has that wonderful analogy where he's like, he writes, his process is like, you're a paleontologist and you're unearthing a dinosaur skeleton, one bone at a time, and you don't know what the dinosaur is. You're just following the fossils, and they reveal to you the shape of the story. And oftentimes I've written scripts following like the Save the Cat kind of beat map, and I've outlined before, but with Barbarian, I really didn't do anything like that. I just was an audience member, truly. And so I just kind of followed my nose, and it was really fun. It was just like the way a little kid colors with crayons. I never thought I would show anybody, so I didn't feel like I had to obey any rules whatsoever. So, it was just this free creative lark. And then as I wrote, took me a few nights to get her down under the house, and eventually it was time for the character Keith to do whatever it was he was going to do. And I just had this realization that like, there's nothing he can do. Like there's really no move he can pull that's going to surprise anybody, because, anybody who's going to read this has seen this coming since page 2 when he opens the door. So like I basically wasted my time. And then I was like annoyed with it. I was just like, well, this fucking sucks. I've wasted 45 pages and, 4 nights of my life and whatever. I didn't care. And because I didn't care, I was just like, and then a giant naked lady comes out of nowhere and smashes his head to pieces. And I was like, well, fuck, that's pretty cool. I like that. now I like it. Oh, wow. And then I was just like, what would be the most fun thing to go to now? And I was like, the Pacific Ocean in California. And I mean, it all just kind of came flooding in. Like, I was like, okay, the opposite of the first act, the photo negative. If the first act is about a woman being hyper vigilant and hyper aware and categorizing behavior, then the inverse of that is a predator with no awareness who's completely oblivious. And so I just like followed this guy. And it all honestly kind of just came to me in a big flood, like an instantaneous flood, where I kind of saw what the movie would be for the first time when I thought of the Pacific Ocean. And I was like, okay, let's just follow this. And then I did. And, I'm a big fan of, David Lynch's writing process. I don't know if you've read Catching the Big Fish, his book, but like I've really tried, and I don't always, but I try and incorporate transcendental meditation into my writing. So, for me, the process of writing is always like, I write and then I get stuck, and then I write and then I get stuck. And when I get stuck, I feel despair and I feel like it's broken, it's ruined, I've wasted my time, no one's going to like it. And then I go and I meditate, and not always, not even often, but sometimes the meditation will present the solution to me. It'll just come out of the dark. And it is, I like how David Lynch describes it as like catching the big fish, like I dive deep into this murky black water of my mind, and somehow I'll snag the solution. And usually it just like appears perfect. And so my job is really to just be receptive to those ideas. I don't really feel like for a lot of my stuff, I don't feel like it's up to me what I write. I don't get to decide, I'm going to make it funny or I'm going to make it this. I just try and stay like an antenna that is open to whatever the vibration of the story. That's a crazy sentence that I just said, but I just try and stay open. I just try and stay receptive because the ideas don't come from me. It feels like they're out there, and I just have to find them. I have to let them appear to me. And when they come, I just kind of intuitively feel like that feels like the right idea. That's what the story wants. And then I just allow that to go. So it's a weird thing, but I try and get my conscious mind completely out of the equation. And I try and be a total conduit to my subconscious mind as I'm writing. And that was certainly the case for Barbarian. Now, other scripts I've written before then, I have done note cards and Save the Cat beat sheets and all of that stuff. And I will also say that I love those scripts. Like, in fact, my favorite script I've ever written in my life is not Barbarian. It's a script that was completely a slave to the Save the Cat beat sheet model. And I was like, I'm going to hit the page numbers that Blake Snyder wants me to hit for like my act breaks. I'm going to hit that page. And I did. And the script came out like really special. And I deeply love it. I like it more than Barbarian. So I'm not saying that one way is better than the other. But for the purposes of how Barbarian was written, it was a total intuitive process.
It's interesting. When I came across in my research the fact that your relationship with horror began at age 7. You were at a sleepover, I think, and you saw The Shining.
I don't think I was 7. I don't think I was 7, but I was very young. I was a kid, but that's too young to watch.
I was going to say, when I came across that quote.
No, I think I was like 12 or 13, an appropriate age, maybe arguably not. But I mean, if I had a 12-year-old and I found out, I don't have any kids, but if I had a 12-year-old and I found out he watched The Shining, I wouldn't be worried. I'd be like, oh man, did you like it? But if I had a 7-year-old who watched The Shining, I'd be like, who were the adults in the house and what is their phone number? You know what I mean? Like, yeah. I would be upset.
A little too close in age to, was it Danny Lloyd? Is that the name of the actor?
Yeah, that's too much.
But I wasn't surprised to find out that was the beginning of your relationship with the genre, because obviously Barbarian is a vastly different movie to The Shining, but there is a little bit of that kind of Kubrickian sense of like a filmmaker spilling his subconscious onto the page. And that results in a lot of surprises and a lot of rich layering that, reveals itself on repeat watches and things like that. And that's something that happens when, from the sounds of it, you've handed over the keys to your story, to the deepest parts of your psyche when you've written this movie.
Hopefully. I find when I sit down to write, I just want to get my fingers moving. And even if I have outlined something, I just want to, the first draft is going to be terrible. And I named the document like brutally rough, blah, whatever the title is, so that I am giving myself permission to just shit it out and not judge it and let it be bad. Sometimes I know I have a scene. I know what the scene needs to be, but I don't have the energy to like write the scene well. I will just start writing like the placeholder kind of dialogue or whatever. But what always happens is when I let myself get into that mode of like, who gives a shit, just get to the end and we'll come back and we'll make it good later. Often what I find is that the best stuff comes out of that, because I've completely let myself off the hook and I'm not result oriented. I'm just flow oriented. Very frequently, that is when my favorite things in the script will come out of it. And I find I don't have to go back and rewrite it. And oftentimes when I sit there and I really go slow and I think deeply about like how this should play out and I start crafting it, it's pretty lame, and I got to come back and I got to like actually do a lot more rolling up the sleeves and scrubbing. So that's just something I've learned about myself, is that the more kind of careless I am, the more I allow my subconscious to take over. And as long as I'm a conduit and not a creator, then better things happen for me.
And the word subconscious is an important one. The film wasn't just written in a way that handed over the keys to your subconscious. It's also a movie that, certainly in that first act, from what I understand, it's kind of about subconscious.
It is. That's true.
Can you tell our listeners about The Gift of Fear by Gavin de Becker?
Yes.
That's a book, obviously, for any listeners who aren't aware. It's kind of about like the signals our brains are constantly processing that teach us to survive. Maybe you have a better definition, Zach, but that was my interpretation.
You've hit it exactly. It's saying that every person is born with this subconscious alarm system, that has been like programmed into us from when we were, ancient primates, and basically society has trained us, and primarily women, to ignore. That alarm system has been kind of socialized out of us very frequently, and the premise of the book is basically saying, your fear, your internal subconscious, alarm bells, that is a gift, and you should honor it. And so there's a lot of examples in this book where he talks about women entering situations with men where men are doing very subtle things that are not necessarily nefarious, but your internal red flags are rising. And so those things could be like a man touching you in a non-sexual way that you didn't initiate, or injecting sexuality into a non-sexual conversation, or forced teaming. Forced teaming means like using the word we a lot and kind of subconsciously trying to like pair you and him together as a unit when it's not really appropriate, or doing you a favor that you didn't ask for, that sort of thing. And he's saying, women especially need to be more aware when they see these behaviors, and you need to not be afraid to be sticking to your boundaries, and anyway, so I was reading that book, and I just had the realization that God, like, I don't have to think about this stuff ever because I'm a man, and it's just like I just never have to worry that half the population could pose some potential threat to me. Because I live in a completely alien psychic landscape than women do, even if I'm sitting in the same room. And so that was just really, really a compelling concept for me. And so the idea of a scene with a double booked Airbnb, really to me, it was an opportunity to load an interaction between a man and a woman with as many of these micro red flags as possible. So when Keith says, "Oh, Tess, pretty name," he's injecting sexuality. When he makes her tea she didn't ask for, he's doing a favor. When he's like, "Come inside and we'll call these idiots," he's forced teaming. All of these are called PINs, according to Gavin de Becker. That's an acronym for pre-incident notifiers. Right? It's like they don't necessarily mean he's a bad guy, but these are the kind of things that will happen before an incident, and you want to pay attention. And if there's a lot of pins, you want to get the fuck out of the situation. And so Tess has a really good, Tess is smart and she's clocking these pins, but she doesn't leave. And ultimately she was, I guess, right, because Keith isn't, the villain of the movie, but that was the machine that was the engine of the first act.
And I'd be curious to hear, Zach, like the finished scene in the movie, like it orchestrates this really compelling kind of psychological tug of war in the viewer. Like every single shot, every single like second that passes seems to kind of pull you in one way to thinking, okay, there's something nefarious about him. Or, oh, look, there's his toothbrush, which is weirdly calming, and sort of, that's just such a normalizing item to have.
Right. Well, the toothbrush, that's evidence that he is a short-term tenant. If he'd lived here, he wouldn't have that toothbrush plugged in on the ground like that. That's what you do when you're staying for one night. His little travel shampoo. Like, okay, that is driving home the narrative that he presented to me. Unless he is like really put a lot of energy into this, but like, for him to go into the bathroom and arrange his toiletries in this way is pretty above and beyond for someone laying a trap. So yes, that is her like giving herself permission to kind of believe him,
But was it getting the balance right? Was it tricky? Did it involve a lot of tinkering? Because it really is so finely poised. And as I say, it is almost from line of dialogue to line of dialogue, shot to shot. You're kind of pulled in different directions.
I mean, it's all on the page. And, I shot it very, very I was very calculated with the shot list. So I knew exactly before I got on set, exactly what I was going to be, where the cameras would be. And, with Bill, my whole direction to him was like, dude, the only thing you got to do as this is not be creepy. The nicer you are, the more everyone is going to be convinced you're the bad guy. We got to be aware of the movie people think they're watching. And what would that movie try and do? That movie would try and make you look nice. So that's what we do, and he got it. He was on the same page. Now, there were little things like, for example, in the script and what we shot was she comes out of the room after photographing his wallet and gives it back to him. She's like, I'm going to go take a shower. And then she takes a shower. And I was really excited because I got the clear shower curtain and I framed it like the Psycho shot where I was, like all this negative space. So you can kind of see out into the shower. I was like, oh, I'm like paying homage to Psycho here. And, it's tense. And then we screened it in our first friends and family screening. And every woman was like, she would never go in the bathroom and take a shower. And I was like, oh, okay, good to know. so I cut the shower out and I had an ADR her, instead of saying, I'm going to go take a shower, saying, I'm going to go wash up. And so that was a little bit of like the tug of war of like, let's fine tune it and get the tension right here.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
And what's so cool about like these opening 30 pages or so is, as you say, like a lot of the things happening are kind of like things we've seen before, but you find a fresh approach to them. And Tess, as you kind of noted earlier, she's smart. Like historically, basements on screen, like they're kind of physical, the geography of them and the horrors they always contain. They've kind of typically represented this sort of descent into the dark, into the abyss. Right. And that's a part of like horror storytelling. The way that Tess kind of like, well, you'll tease her kind of being about to make the sort of dumb decision that characters in horror movies often make, and then she literally will say nope and construct a different, smarter plan. Was this something that you had thought about and were purposefully kind of trying to put into your script? Like, did it end up in the movie organically from just having sat through so many movies where you're screaming, "Don't go down there" at the screen? Like, talk me through it, Zach.
It's not conscious. I mean, it was just as I was writing, it just felt like that would be what I would want to see her do in that moment when she finds the hallway. Look, I know that I'm not going to have her just walk down a dark hallway. That's crazy. So I'm trying to keep her believable. She says no. And then time goes by and she realizes like, I'm just going to sit here for who knows how long. Well, let me see if I can get a peek. So it was just, that was my thought process of just like, what would she really do? And I could believe she would aim the mirror. I could believe if she sees a doorknob that she would be like, well, okay, it's been 3 hours. There's a door. Maybe I can maybe it leads out. I could believe then that she would walk down there. Now, I think I lose some people in this movie when Keith is screaming, "Help me," from the bottom of those stairs and the new staircase, and she goes down the stairs. I've heard pretty consistently that, you know, when some people, the issue some people have with this movie is like that's a bridge too far. Okay. Fair enough. I can't fault anybody for having that opinion. For me, it's like that's her whole engine. You know, it's like she says, "I can't go back" when she's on the couch talking to Keith about her toxic relationship. You know, her character is like, for me, you know, this is not on the page at all, but she's the child of an alcoholic. I'm the child of an alcoholic. What that means is that I bend myself into whatever shape the person I'm with wants me to be. You know what I mean? So I am a doormat often. And this is my life's work, is to try and overcome this part of myself. But like, so for Tess, the idea that she's in a toxic relationship where she's assumed the behavior that the person she's with wants. She keeps going back. She can't stop putting others before herself. That's her character flaw. That's what she has to overcome. The literal extreme of that is infantilization. So when the mother is making her drink out of a bottle, that's me saying, like, this is what I am. Like, I'm a baby, like being forced into a role I didn't choose for myself. And so to me, her going down after Keith when he's saying, "Help me," is like just perfectly in line with who she is. And that's why her last line of the movie is, "I can't go back." Before she shoots the mother, she's talking about Marcus. She's talking about herself. She's talking about, like, I have got to break the pattern. And so she shoots them. So to me, it's like, I understand if some people have a problem with that. Maybe that's a deficiency of the script. But for me, it's a parable about myself and about what I need to work on as a person. And so I totally love that she goes down into the dark after Keith, and that she has to do it.
Yeah. I mean, the film kind of necessitates that she does. It'd be a pretty short film without that.
Right. Yeah. There's also that.
Yeah. We touched on it earlier. Like, you were writing this scene, you didn't know that it was a feature, and you had the characters go down into the basement, and you hit a bit of a brick wall from the sounds of things. Mm-hmm. You didn't know how to proceed in a way that wouldn't kind of have Keith then kill Tess, or something happened that sort of felt kind of tropey, I suppose.
Right.
So instead, speaking of brick walls, you had a giant naked woman stomp into the frame and bash Keith's head into one.
Right.
From that moment on, what was your process then for finding the mythology of who that woman was? Like, what might have contributed to, you know, her appearance, her strength, her placement in this basement, all those things?
Yeah, this is not going to be a very satisfying answer, I'm afraid. But the real truth of it is, as I wrote that, she comes out of the darkness, all of her story came out with her in that moment. Like, wow, when she appeared and grabbed him, I knew in that 4 seconds what she was and what this was. It all just was like, it was like the whole lore came with her. Like, of course she's down there. Of course, that's who built her father and grandfather, the same person, you know, and maybe great grandfather built this. Like, it was the perfect thing that I think was always there. You know, I think that's the other thing is, like, when you obey your subconscious, it will reward you. I really believe it. So it's like, I think I knew even when she found the secret door, like, I don't think I consciously knew it, but I think inside of me, I knew there's a man many generations ago who built this as his, like, Fritzl, you know, kind of a tunnel. And what would be down there? Maybe him still as a very old man, and maybe his, like, really fucked up offspring. I don't think I had that in my head. I mean, I didn't have that in my head when I was writing all the stuff of her going down to find Keith in the depths and the cages and all that. I knew the cages. I knew at that point, it's like, okay, someone a long time ago built this. But when the mother came out, it was the first time, like, my conscious mind really accepted, like, okay, she is the offspring of the original terror of this place. That is, of course, true. And I didn't need to think too deep about it. It was just right there. Like, the fact that she existed summed everything up for me. So, yeah, that was it. It just was a flash.
And I don't think I've ever experienced a form of whiplash quite like that cut from, you know, that particular moment of violence to Justin Long's character, AJ, singing in his car on the Pacific Highway. I'm excited to talk about AJ's character.
Sure.
I feel like it's worth asking at this moment about the title of this movie. Like, You've described having originally typed it in as just kind of a placeholder.
True.
But then you kind of, from the sounds of it, realized, wow, again, my subconscious, my synapses are firing in ways that I wasn't particularly aware of to kick off with.
I don't think my subconscious can take credit for some of the weirdness about the title, because I just didn't know that information. I'm not that much of a genius sponge. Like, I think what you're hinting at, and I'll just say it, is like,
yeah,
I didn't realize, maybe I did deeply, but I don't think I did. I did not realize that Barbarian is a mutated anagram of Airbnb, which is like thematically perfect. Copy of a copy of a copy, mutation, Airbnb, Barbarian. It's fucking perfect.
Yeah.
I did not think of that. Someone on Reddit told me that, and I was like, holy shit, I'm a genius.
But Zach, how about the fact though that like there is an ambiguity to that word, like
that I like. That well, that was the point. That I was doing intentionally. I was like, okay, barbarian is a word you don't hear too much this day and age. It implies brutality. It implies savagery. And I think I'm writing a movie about a predator who's going to do something horrible to this woman. This is a pretty opaque word that kind of gets the gist out there. And I think in my first sitting down and writing session, I wrote that the street was Barbary Street.
Yeah.
I can't remember. Maybe I retrofitted that after I thought of the title. I really don't remember. But it just seemed like, okay, Barbarian. For now, this will work. This feels like a horror movie title. Let's go. And then that was day one, and I always thought I would change it. And then as I just kept writing it, I just got more and more attached to it. And so when it was done, I was just like, it's Barbarian. That's what it is. And then I found out that like the address of the house, 476 Barbary, 476 is the year the barbarians sacked Rome. I didn't know that. And then I learned that like the etymology of the word barbarian, where it was like a word that the Greeks used as a pejorative to describe the Persians, because they thought that their language sounded like someone going bar, 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 bar. So they started calling them barbarians as like a diss. Yeah. And that's where the word, and then the word kind of changed to mean anyone that is not one of us, like a savage outsider. But the idea that it started mocking someone because their language was ba, 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 which is the only thing the mother says is ba, ba, ba. And it's like, that's so perfect. I can't believe it. But believe me, I did not know that. So it's just a happy accident, but I love it. I think it's fantastic.
Well, I bring up the title in relation to AJ because, well, from my perspective, the word, the title Barbarian, its meaning kind of evolves through the course of the movie. Who it refers to is ambiguous depending on what stage you're at in the film. The way that titles typically work, traditionally speaking in the horror genre, you're kind of braced for the mother to be the barbarian that the title refers to. She's physically the most quote unquote barbaric, the most monstrous. But over the course of the film, of course, we're exposed to all these characters who are way more monstrous in behavior. Like Frank could be the barbarian of the title. AJ is another type of barbarian. We're seeing kind of different degrees of barbarianism. I don't know if that's a word. But it's different extremes of the same types of people who are violent in their exploitation of the women in their vicinity. Can you tell me about how AJ evolved? How he began in your mind as a Zac Efron type, how he did or didn't kind of become the barbarian of the title in your mind as you wrote the thing, and why, as you kind of initially started with that Zac Efron mold for the character, why you kind of decided that approach needed a bit of tinkering.
Yeah, what a mistake that would have been. Not no disrespect to Zac Efron and his ability as an actor, but I just think it was a missed opportunity. The idea of a sexual predator being a charming and endearing and very likable person is so much more A, realistic, and B, terrifying version, because if it was some bro that was like kind of villainous, then like, it wouldn't be as horrifying to go and publicly, speak your truth of what they've done to you. But if it's some like Tom Hanks that everyone loves, then that's not going to be as easy for you to go public and be like, this guy did this horrible thing. Everyone's gonna be like, Tom Hanks did what? I don't think so. Like that's where people are going to start at. And so I think that casting Justin was really, I was so lucky to have him sign on because because he just naturally brings this golden retriever energy that everyone can't help but like. Justin is incredibly likable, and so yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting how the film, it kind of leverages the connotations that we have, both with Justin Long, who, we think of as this affable boy next door type because of his previous roles. And of course, Bill Skarsgård, who he was Pennywise, he was in It. So, we think of him as inherently creepy, I suppose, or we expect from him a performance that's going to go somewhere dark, that's going to go somewhere terrifying. The film kind of takes our baggage as an audience in terms of the kind of characters we've seen those actors inhabit before, and it uses it against us to kind of keep us on our toes. Another thing that's really fascinating that I wanted to discuss, Zach, is, I guess, the connection between the Keith portion of the film and the emergence of AJ's plotline. So in the opening act, there's a really interesting exchange in the script between Tess and Keith, where she kind of explains how she has to think differently to the way a man would every single time she walks into a new situation by virtue of being a woman, because, well, men historically don't need to vet every new space they stride into for the dangers that it poses to them. Women, of course, really sadly do. The tape measure scene that we get to a little bit further on in the film, it's one of the hardest I've laughed in a cinema all year, but it's also, there's also something kind of darkly true that kind of bubbles underneath the surface of that scene. The space that Tess discovers downstairs in the basement, that creepy room with the video camera, bloody handprints on the wall, all that sort of thing. She walks into that space and she interprets it through the danger that it poses to her. AJ walks into the same space and just sees dollar signs. He's excited about the extra value that all this floor space is going to add to his property that he's trying to sell. As I say, it's a hilarious scene, but there is something dark bubbling underneath that speaks to that scene earlier where Tess is explaining, men get to just blast their way through life, and I have to kind of constantly be aware of the dangers that are sort of posed at me. Was that connective tissue, was that something that came instinctively first draft, or did you kind of have to tinker and hone in on that while writing subsequent drafts?
No, that came. And truth be told, when I'm writing AJ measuring the basement, I'm not consciously thinking, now this is a perfect commentary on what Tess said. This is just me being in AJ, just inhabiting that character as a writer and thinking, how does he see this? What is this for him? So I again, it was not conscious.
It's an incredibly funny scene though. And it's perhaps the biggest thumbprint of your background in comedy. That was your career before stepping into horror. And I think I've read you describe once, like, seeing comedy as almost like a mathematical equation, and horror also kind of having a similar kind of algebraic quality.
Yeah.
Can you talk to me about the overlap between the two and exactly what that formula is that defines great comedy and great horror?
Well, the anatomy of a joke and the anatomy of a scare are almost the same, right? It's about timing and subverting expectation to elicit a visceral reaction, So for a joke, you expect A plus B to equal C, but instead A plus B equals D. That surprises me. I laugh. For a scare, it's like, I think I know what's around the corner, and it's not what I think, or it comes sooner than I think, or, and that gets a visceral reaction. I heard, I had this is more on the comedy front, but I had a professor in college. I took a comedy writing class in college, and my professor said that everything you've ever found funny follows the same equation. And I don't know if I agree with it, but I think about this all the time. For 20 years, I've thought about this. So everything you found funny is this. An action with an expected outcome yields an unexpected outcome. That's all. Funny things follow that. And I was like, that can't be true. But I defy anybody to present me with an example of something funny that doesn't follow that reaction, that equation. And the other thing he said that I thought was really interesting was everything funny is human. Everything intrinsically funny is human. Now, the first thing everyone's probably thinking when I say that is, no, my dog is hilarious. Well, right, because you're anthropomorphizing your dog because it has like human qualities that are funny, but like a roach is not funny. An amoeba is not funny because it's so removed from humanity. Trees are not funny unless you anthropomorphize them. So that's neither here nor there for the conversation that we're having, but it's just something that I really love to think about. It's like the nature of comedy is a deeply human thing about like subverted expectations. And I don't know. I'm very fascinated with that. I'm still trying to find like an exception to his rule, but I've never found one.
But you see a certain amount of overlap, do you, between that formula applying to comedy and applying to horror? Like you're still looking for that unexpected. I don't know how it applies to horror, but for certain it must, right? The subversion of the expectation is a big part of horror. Now there's weird examples that I can think of that are almost not like, there's the great David Lynch Mulholland Drive scare. You know what I'm talking about? With behind the diner and the man comes out, and it's like, now that scare gives us exactly what he told us was going to happen. He was like, behind the diner, there's a man and he's doing it and he's scary. And so we're going to go around the corner, and we know, like, it's the middle of the day. We know we're going to see something horrible once we turn the corner, that dumpster. And what happens? Exactly what he told us was going to happen. This man comes out and you're like, what? And it's a woman dressed as a man, but this man comes out and it's fucking terrifying. And it's like, but why? Why? It's like A plus B equals C. And I would posit that he's actually riffing on the riff, where we are expecting to be surprised somehow. And so when what happens is actually what we're expecting to happen, where the thing just comes right where it said it was going to come, we're so not prepared for that it actually is like a hat on a hat. It's like a trick on a trick. You know what I mean? I don't know if I'm right about this, and I could be way off base, but that is one of the most effective moments of horror I've ever seen. And it's still a mystery to me why it's so great. I love it so deeply. The flashback scene. There was an Austrian movie called Angst that kind of inspired this section of the film, and very much like the styling of it, like the way the camera sort of lingers behind the character. Like before that had come up in my research, like I had read the scene as having this almost kind of like video game like quality. Like the thing it reminded me of was Grand Theft Auto, like the way the sort of camera lingers behind the shoulders of this character. And of course, like GTA and things like that, these are kind of, as much as I love them, they're kind of very violent, very male, and they're kind of representative of a certain culture. Was that purposeful? Is that kind of off base? Like, was it solely Angst, this Austrian movie, that kind of inspired the execution of this section? It was
Angst, and it was Elephant. And when I say no, the Irish elephant that Gus Van Sant's Elephant is based off of.
Right. Okay.
There's a 45-minute made-for-TV film in the 80s in Ireland about the Troubles called Elephant. And it's a series. It's sort of a plotless, almost dialogueless film that's a series of like 7 or 8 murders. And basically that movie plays out where you follow a man for like 4 minutes silently through the city, and then he'll walk into an alley or into a deli or into some place and he'll murder another person. And then the camera just stays on the corpse for like 2 minutes. And then it just cuts to another man and you follow him for like 4 minutes, and then he'll murder someone and it stays on the corpse. And it goes again and again and again. And it's this like bizarre, very dreadful movie. And it's called Elephant because the elephant in the room in Ireland was the Troubles. And it's like, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Let's have this conversation. Right, it's a really brilliant movie. And Gus Van Sant appropriated it in a brilliant way. And I fully love his movie. So Elephant in America is like, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Let's talk about Columbine. And yes, I was very inspired by his Elephant also. I actually think that the Gus Van Sant Elephant movie is one of the scariest movies I've ever seen, because it was so dreadful following these kids through these hallways of this high school. Because at some point they're going to round a corner and shots are going to start. It's going to pop off. You don't know when. You don't know if they're going to die. You don't know what's going to happen, but it's coming. It's inevitable. It's like gravity. It's just so tense. And I was mesmerized by his use of this wide angle lens following his subject. And the visceral, palpable dread that just came with that visual vocabulary. So Angst and Elephant together kind of were my North Stars. That's a weird whatever. That's a clunky way of saying it, but those were my guides for that sequence.
And the way in that sequence you're harnessing like a lot of the iconography of the time, and you're really signaling to the audience the period that it's set in. Was that just a case of like, for narrative purposes, you needed to make clear like we're flashing back here, or was there anything about like the America of that time that you feel like you were kind of, you or your subconscious was kind of like putting onto the page, putting onto the screen?
I wasn't consciously trying to make any point about America. It just felt like the right move, to go back and see this neighborhood healthy and see like the beginning of this, how did these tunnels, who built the tunnels? I thought that would be something I would want to see briefly. And so telling this new kind of chapter of Frank, I also knew that we needed a moment of respite after the intensity of AJ falling in the tunnel. I couldn't go from AJ getting chased through the tunnel and falling in the pit straight to the bottle and the nursing. I was just like, it's too much. It's going to just drain everybody. And so I've already earned a flashback. I feel like I've earned the trust from the audience that they know I'm going to, I'm not going to abandon them. I didn't before. I'm not going to do it this time. I'm going to bring them back. And I felt like to see the house in its old glory would be intriguing. And I think I could hold people's attention for 10 minutes with this diversion and then come back and pick up where we left off. And I think people would be grateful to have a little bit of a reset, breathing room kind of a thing. So it was sort of that. Honestly, where it came from, to be totally candid, about a year and a half into shopping the script around and getting nobody on board, an independent producer, read it and liked it, and he said he was in. And I was over the moon. And the Frank stuff wasn't in the script at that point. And he said, he was like, I only have one note. He's like, it needs a new dimension. I don't know what that is, but it just feels like it needs one more layer of something. It's not deep enough. And so I was shooting some documentary upstate, and I was in my hotel. I was like, I'd finished my workday, and I was just like, oh, I just had the idea of the flashback. So I wrote the flashback. I thought it really did add a good depth dimension to the script, and I sent it back to this guy, and he never responded. He never respond. I worked so hard, and he ghosted me, dude. He straight up ghosted, and it hurt my feelings like so bad. Like you don't even know. I was like, I guess he hated it, and I don't know. I've never spoken with him again. I still have no idea like what happened or why. I think he's probably, he must know about the movie at this point, but I'm glad that happened because he did push me to add a new layer to the movie. And I think it makes the movie so much stronger. So, it felt at the time like a real blow, and it certainly was to my ego, but I have to thank the guy now because like, hey man, you thanks for that. You got it there. So I guess he's a good producer.
Yeah, I guess so.
I guess he is.
A little bit of a ghosty one, but that's okay. Yeah. So in that first draft then, without Frank, like, was it just kind of a mystery as to where the mother came from?
You have to just guess. I thought it was kind of clear. I was like, clearly some dude has like built this and she's the offspring. But like what wasn't in there was, AJ doesn't go deeper into the tunnels and find Frank, doesn't find the videotapes, doesn't get the gun, doesn't shoot Tess. Instead, Tess escapes, gets the cops, comes back in, and like I can't remember how, but somehow gets AJ out, and then the denouement happened on a church nearby, and everything plays out kind of the same. But there was no Frank flashback. There was no Frank in the tunnels. There's no gun.
You mentioned the videotapes there.
Mm-hmm.
So by my count, there are 3 moments in this movie where the story could have played out slightly differently. Like not necessarily narrative wise, but certainly in terms of like the message and, for want of a better phrase, like the sort of feministic values of the film. Like, so first of all, there's a moment in which the audience gets to see AJ admit that he raped his colleague.
Right.
He's drunk with his pal at a bar. You could have just
played
left
by
it
me.
I was going to say, I recognize the back of that head. You could have easily left it as allegations and had some ambiguity around it, but instead, no, like you were very forthright about like making it clear for the audience this is a bad guy. Secondly, when AJ comes across the videotapes in Frank's room in the basement, you make the decision to have AJ see the footage, but not the audience.
Mm-hmm.
presumably that would be gratuitous. And then finally, there's the ending kind of confrontation where, you know, you tease like a redemption or at least some sort of realization on AJ's part that he has not been a good person, that he has amends to make. And then obviously that is not how it plays out. It seems to me there's something kind of threaded through all these different decisions. And, you know, you were giving quite a lot of consideration, it seems, to the right thing to do in regard to making this movie a film that kind of aspires to feminist values and does that stuff well. It is really easy, as Keith finds in that opening scene, to be kind of clumsy when trying to kind of do the right thing, say the right thing in these regards.
Yeah.
How did you approach all those calls? Was this another kind of instinctive thing that just came easily? Or did you have to think?
It was. No, it was instinctive. So the Keith stuff, you know, and I'm glad you said that Keith is very clumsy in the way he's like managing the situation. That's me, man. I don't want to come off like I'm some woke, you know, I know how to handle all this stuff. I wrote Keith like me. Like I would have said all that shit, dude. I would have been, I probably wouldn't have said pretty name. I'm smarter than that. I know that's not good, but I would have like, if I was going to have wine, I don't drink, but if I was in that situation, I would have rambled and be like, I saw you didn't drink your tea and I totally get it. Like, this is weird. And you probably think I'm like, you know, but so I wait, like I would have been that dumb. I don't think Keith is a bad guy. He's just not suave. He has what I have, which is a tendency to speak before he thinks. And in that situation, you know, it can be alarming. So that was just me writing me. Also, Tess is me too. So, you know, I've got two me's kind of going back and forth at each other, but it's fine. And then with AJ, you know, it's based off of, it's an amalgamation of people I've met and conversations that I have not necessarily had myself, but that have been related to me of people defending their behavior. That scene in the bar is really directly lifted from a conversation that people I know had, and I just so that's where that comes from. That's the way that I think that most rape, and I could be wrong about this. This is me and my limited guess. You know, I'm not saying this is the case, but I would posit that most rape is coercive. You know, it's not like knife to your throat. It's like a man is coercing a woman, and it gets to the point where she realizes this is going to happen whether I want it to or not. So if I play ball, it's going to be a little bit less traumatic than a straight up violent rape. I think that is what most rape looks like. And it doesn't make it any less horrible. It's still rape, and it's still a fucking crime. And it's wrong. I think that men can rationalize after an event like that it wasn't rape. It was just, you know, girls like to play hard to get. And part of the natural yin and yang of men and women is that like, you know, you can't quit. I think that's what like rapists think to themselves. It's like, you know, I'm persistent. She came around, you know, it's like, that's how you tell yourself the story. And that's not how it went down. And that's not how she sees it. And so that's where that scene came from. And I think it's important that we know, AJ. I think to answer your question is like, I'm ambiguous about a lot in this movie. I'm not ambiguous about whether AJ did it. And that's because to me, I want to know, because I want people to relish what happens to him when he gets his justice. Frankly, you know, it's that simple. It's really that simple. It's like, I don't want to be smart. I want it to be fun when he gets his eyes ripped out, you know, fuck him.
How did you land on that particular way of him dying? And
wasn't what was in the script. You read the script, right? I was
going to say,
yeah. I think it just became clear, like, and the way the homeless man is killed is not how it is in the script.
Can you describe for our listeners how it plays out in
the script? Well, so the homeless man in the script is killed. She Kool-Aids herself through the wall, and she grabs him, one arm around his neck, one arm around his shoulder, like his arm at his armpit, and she pulls him in half, and his like guts spill down out of his body. Now that's so ridiculous. Not to say that ripping someone's arm off is not ridiculous. It is, but it's a little less ridiculous than that. And also I just realized that, like, you know, we were such a shoestring budget, such a tight schedule. I was like, I don't have the resources to pull this off. Like, it was just clear it was going to look bad, because originally also when Keith died, she smashes his head into the wall and then she rips his lower jaw out of his head and then stabs his own jawbone into his eyes. And we tried to shoot that and it didn't look good. You can actually see in the final movie when she drops him, his jaw's missing because we'd filmed that she rips his jaw out. And the problem was that it looked rubber and we couldn't get the jaw to stat. Your jaw is actually wider than your eye sockets. So it was impossible. And then we had to cut the jaw so that it could stick in. It just looked fake. And I just realized after shooting the Keith death, I was like, okay, I got to rethink all these deaths. So I knew I couldn't rip Andre in half. So I was like, what I know I can get away with is we can rip his arm off. Like that's easy. Even though it wasn't, we had to reshoot the gore moment because the first time didn't look right. So we had to reshoot that near the end of the movie. And then Justin's death, in the script, she wraps her hands around his throat so tight and she applies so much pressure to his neck that it forces an eruption, like a volcano of blood, to come out of every orifice in his head. So his ears, his eyes, his nose, and his mouth all just like fire hose blood. Like she's like squeezing the guts of him out of his head. And that's really unrealistic. Doesn't work that way. I know, but I just thought I'd never seen that. I wanted to see it. I was like, this would be cool if I could pull this off. But we couldn't pull it off. Like we didn't have the resources and it was about 3 days until we were shooting that scene. And I was looking at the plans we had in place of filming it. And I just could tell, I was like, the writing's on the wall. Like we gotta figure this out. And I knew like, okay, so what's something that's going to be achievable and still new? And I was like, well, I've never seen somebody stick their thumbs in eyes and use that as leverage to pull a head apart. I was like, that can't be that hard. We just get like a fake head and we shoot it from behind and we just watch the head shape change. I was like, that's doable. I know that's doable. And they agreed. And then I was like, so what we really need is just to worry about, like, we had a mold of Justin's face for my plan A, you know? So we already had the mold, thank God. And I was like, we'll just destroy the mold. We'll stick the thumbs in the eyes. And so really it was about getting the goop of the eyes right. I think we had 2 takes of the eye stab. One was like too much blood. And then the one we finally got where it looked like jelly, like clear, which is good. And then we had 1 take of the from the over the shoulder where she like pops the head. And I wasn't happy with it, quite frankly. I didn't get enough. I wanted blood to like shoot out of his face and like kind of coat her. And the blood like had worked so well in the like test. And then when we filmed it, like the blood just didn't work. And we were so low on sun that I didn't have time to do a take 2. We had to keep moving or we weren't going to be able to finish the movie. Like when she's walking away at the end and the sun is rising in the background, I didn't want there to be sun there. You know, that wasn't part of the plan. I wanted it to be night. You know, it was like the sun came up and that was like, we're done. The sun is up. It's daytime. We're done. No more filming. So I don't know, man. That's what happened. But then you fix these things with audio, you know? So then I got in the edit and I was so upset because it was like, oh, it doesn't look right. And then you add all these great sounds and suddenly it's cool.
And why this sort of note of sympathy towards the mother in that quite tender final scene between her and Tess? Yeah.
Well, that, you know, to me, the mother is an innocent, you know, like all the best movie monsters, King Kong, even Leatherface, are like innocent. You know, they're just working with what they can with the tools at their disposal and their limited tools. You know, King Kong is not a bad entity. He's an animal and he's capable of great love. He's just doesn't fit into our society, you know, into our world. And so we treat him as a monster. And I think that is what a great monster is. It's someone that's not inherently evil. They just don't fit. You know, Leatherface he's not evil. He's a machine. He was raised to slaughter. And he's a simpleton and he just doesn't know that like these teenagers that keep invading his house, like he only knows how to deal with them one way. When you're a hammer, everything's a nail. Those kids happen to be nails. Sorry kids. But he's not a villain. And I don't think the mother is evil. You know, she has only witnessed 2 forms of behavior, her father's overwhelming violence and this videotape of mother love that she's watched ad infinitum her entire life. So she's a binary, you know, there's nothing in between. And so I really love that about her. I love that she's not this monster in the basement. She's this person that's deeply, deeply ill-equipped to function with other people. And it's sad to me that she never had a chance. And a beautiful thing came out of working with Matthew, who played her, where, I made the videotape that she watched. That was the first thing I filmed, was like, the nursing video. And before I filmed it, he was like, hey, can you send me the nursing video? Because I'd really love to mimic the behavior of the woman in the video. And I was like, oh, buddy, brilliant. I haven't even filmed it yet, but that gave me the idea to work in all these gestures for him to emulate. So the boop of the nose was like, he can boop Justin's nose. I'll make the woman boop the baby. And like the kiss on Tessa's forehead is like, oh, like that's so beautiful that like she's being the mom from the video. She loves this baby. And like, that's a final moment. And so thank God Matthew had that idea.
And this isn't really a screenwriting question, but I'm curious about it nonetheless. In the fallout of this movie's kind of runaway success, did you happen to hear at all from Airbnb themselves? Like in my head, some poor member of the publicity team probably had to call up their boss one day.
I wonder if they've been scrambling, like, what is this? What is this movie doing to us? What the hell? But this is so extreme. It's a fantasy. I've used Airbnb so much of my life, and I have had some really bad experiences. I mean, I checked into it. I had an Airbnb once. I didn't realize it was in a terrible neighborhood. I got there very late at night, and the lockbox didn't work. And it was like 2 a.m, dude. And it was a rough area. And the lockbox, I couldn't get my key, couldn't get in. And I was stranded, and I was really upset. I remember a cop drove by. I flagged him down. I was like, I just want you to know I'm going to break into this house because I'm supposed to be in there, but like the lockbox won't work. So I just want you to know, I'm breaking in. And he was like, don't break in. And he was like, no, you're not. I was like, what the fuck? So yeah, I mean, it's not a hotel, it's not a hotel. And you're kidding yourself if you think you don't have to be more careful. You're entering into a stranger's home, and it's different.
I hadn't actually asked about the cops in this movie.
Right.
How did they kind of figure into your plans for this? Like, it seems like, again, like the narrative could have theoretically, if the studio or whoever had wanted to sort of trim this thing, like the same story could play out without them. But it is such an interesting kind of quirk of the script, the fact that Tess kind of meets these cops and they're just completely nonplussed by everything she's saying.
I wasn't trying to make a comment on anything related to like police in America. I really wasn't. It's impossible. It's almost reckless for me to say that because it's so loaded in America that any portrayal of police in America is political and someone's going to take issue with it, whether it's police or affected people or whatever. So I recognize I'm wading into very fraught territory here. But to me, it was just a device to give her a false victory. She gets out, she gets the cops. But what do? They bring her and they leave her at the worst place at the worst time, where she's not supposed to be here at night. And all of a sudden now it's night and they're leaving her. And it's like, it's worse than it was. So I just thought that was just too good. I couldn't think of a better idea for it. It just felt right. It was just like, I obey the story as it comes to me. And, a lot of times when I'm stuck, I remember for that, I didn't know what to do. When she got out of the house, I had no idea. So what I'll do a lot is I'll open up a notes document and I'll give myself a homework assignment. I'll say, I have 10 minutes to write 5 bad ideas of what can happen to this character. And I don't want any of them to be good. So I'm going to write 5 terrible ways that this movie could play out for the next 12 pages. So I just start blasting them out. And I think that the cop one was the second one. And it was one of those ones where it's like, as soon as I wrote that, I was like, well, that's what it is. I don't need to write anymore. It worked. The exercise worked. And I still do that all the time. And when I get stuck, I'm like, okay, what are 5 horrible options I can do to like resolve this jam? And sometimes you get lucky that way.
So obviously Hollywood moves pretty quickly when a film has been as successful as Barbarian has been. Have you been sounded out about a sequel or exploring this world in greater depth? Is that something you'd be interested in?
I have been. My initial reaction was no, because I feel like the what works about Barbarian isn't the subject matter of the story, but more the method in which the story unravels. And I don't think that's something you can ever replicate or duplicate. So I was for a long time. So I've been sort of at a loss and kind of like poo-pooing the idea of a sequel, because what would that be? Like another movie about a rape dungeon? Like, no, thanks. But then I do think that there is maybe a way to do a tangential story about this world that takes the perspective of a character that you might not expect, and following them in a way that would really allow us to play with the same unfolding of a mystery kind of wrapped up in this world. So I know I'm being a little vague. I don't want to get too deep into it at this stage. It's too early, but I do think that there is room for another good story in this world. But I can promise you, the conversations have not been too in the weeds. Like they're very cursory at this point. I'm writing another horror movie right now that I'm very excited about, that will hopefully, if I'm lucky enough to make another movie, it will be the one I'm currently writing. And so I'm really putting all of my energy into that.
At the top of the show, you mentioned the favorite thing you'd ever written. And previously, I've heard you speak in glowing terms about a project set in the world of Batman, I think is how you described it. Right. Is that the thing you were referring to? And has the success of Barbarian put you any closer to being able to make that?
Yes, that's what I'm referring to. I have a story that takes place in Gotham City, and I love it. And this is the story I wrote that was truly Blake Snyder beat sheet to the T, you know, but it doesn't feel formulaic. That's the beauty to me of the Save the Cat formula, is that it is formulaic, but if you pull it off, it just feels like a compelling story. And I'm very proud of this script. I'm very, very happy with it. I think it's really, it's like a Swiss watch. And, so yeah, you know, I don't know what's going to happen with that. You know, I don't think my go-to quote is, I don't think I'm going to get the keys to that car anytime soon. And that's okay. I have another movie I'm very excited to make, hopefully in the next year. But maybe one day there will be an opportunity to make that, and I would leap at that opportunity. And that's all I'm going to say about it.
And in terms of this next project that you are moving on to, again, you've described it as a horror movie. Are there similarities to Barbarian in terms of the surprises, or like anything? Is it a completely different breed of horror? How would you describe it? It's
well, it's weirder than Barbarian, and I think that, like Barbarian, it's smart and stupid. You know, I'll say that it's definitely dumb smart, which is how I would describe Barbarian. And it does not follow a 3-act structure. You know, I really don't want to pigeonhole myself as like the structured guy. Like, this is the guy that, like, you know, jumps all over the place. Like I'm very gun shy of doing that, but this story just wants to be told in this way. It wants to be kind of fragmented and kind of a little scattered. It's not as disorienting. Like in Barbarian, I'm intentionally kind of disorienting the audience. And in this new one, I'm not. So as much as it's a bizarre, you know, atypical structure, it's never confusing, I hope. But I'm very excited about it. It feels much more ambitious. You know, David Bowie has this great quote where he says, like, you should always be wading into deeper and deeper creative waters, and you're never quite sure if you're going to drown or not. Like I'm doing that. It's a bigger swing than Barbarian was, but I think it might ultimately be a better movie. I hope so anyways. You know, if not, what am I doing?
That's really exciting, man. Of course, the big question that is on everyone's mind is, what life hack what duvet style life hack are you gonna thread into this one? Because, dude, look, let me just swing my camera around.
Oh yeah, hey,
look at that duvet.
Oh, look at that, perfect. Yeah,
that's the Barbarian
perfect
effect,
distribution. If you've ever had trouble dicing tomatoes, this movie is gonna sort you right out. I got you.
Zach, on that note, thank you so much, man. This has been so much fun. And again, congratulations on Barbarian.
Thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time. I appreciate it, man.
You've been listening to Script Apart, hosted by me, Al Horner, produced by Camille Demek. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.